Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Really appreciate people taking time to learn more about this project that the City of Virginia has been working on for some time. We're very excited. I'm excited tonight to, I'm the city manager for Virgins. With me is Jenny Oster, who is our project manager with Hoyle Tanner, the engineering firm. And also with me is Rick Chaput. Rick is the chief operator for the wastewater treatment facility. And Rick, it's been great working with you. Jenny also, it's been an interesting journey in the last year that I've been here. And I think we have a very interesting sort of story to tell tonight. So let us get started. We're gonna start with a really quick PowerPoint, and then Jenny and Rick are gonna jump in. So just to lead off, on the March ballot will be Article 2, and Article 2 gives voters the option to consider a bond that would completely refurbish the current wastewater treatment system, collection system, the entire wastewater and stormwater system in the city. We want to talk about why that's needed now. We think, and having worked on this for quite some time. The first is that our collection and treatment facilities, they're old and they need to be replaced. We can tell you a little bit more about that. The second is that we need to stop polluting Lake Champlain and Otter Creek. We have storm surges, heavy rains, and raw sewage is spilling into Lake Champlain and Otter Creek. And we're under an order by the state to cease, and we're definitely on the path with this project. And also state and federal opportunities for funding are probably the most amazing in a generation. And we want to take advantage of that. We see some opportunities, and we certainly, because our project is getting closer and closer to being shovel ready, it's created some opportunities for us. And we're certainly more attractive to funders. So with that in mind, I want to pass this over to Jenny and Rick and just talk about geographically, sort of give you an idea of where things are when we talk about our system. Tonight, we'll talk about things like the McDonough pump station. We'll talk about the sewer main that runs under Otter Creek, using my cursor there. We'll talk about something called the Headworks building and the wastewater treatment facility, which is on Canal Street at the very end, and also our lagoons. Jenny or Rick, any additional thoughts on that?
Looking good.
Okay. Well, Jenny, why don't you jump into our facilities?
So thanks, Ron, for the introduction. I'm Jenny Oster with Hoyle Tanner. I'm the project manager and technical lead for the project. And the first slide here is just a little bit of history, just to kind of frame when Ron says that the infrastructure is old. Here's some dates to go through. So the McDonough Drive pump station was originally built in 1962. It handles 75% of the sewer flows that are passed through the collection system on their way to the wastewater treatment facility. That is where the sanitary sewer overflow is. And so when too much flow comes to that pump station and it's not able to be pumped over to the treatment facility, a portion overflows into Otter Creek. The next piece of the infrastructure we're talking about is from that pump station underneath Otter Creek, a force main conveys that flow from the pump station over to the treatment facility. And there's a single force main, and that was built in 1962. The sanitary sewer collection system, there's a range of age as the city has developed, but it originated before 1910 with the significant line replacements in 1978 and 79. And there have been newer additions, certainly improvements over time, but it's to kind of give a sense of the age of the collection system. And lastly, the wastewater treatment facility, so where all of the wastewater goes to get treated to be acceptable to go into Otter Creek and into Lake Champlain. That was built in 1962 with significant upgrades in 1978, 79, and in 2000. So when we think about the pollution to Lake Champlain and Otter Creek, this stems around the McDonough Drive pump station and that sanitary sewer overflow. So at that sanitary sewer overflow, the city is discharging untreated sewage during heavy rain. So at times when too much flow, that pump station, and the pump station is not able to pump that volume of flow over to the treatment facility, some of it overflows into essentially Otter Creek. In April 2018, the Department of Environmental Conservation for Vermont issued what's called a 1272 order. So that is a legal order requiring the city of Vergennes to submit a long-term control plan by October of 2019. A long-term control plan is a document that outlines how the city intends to meet the requirements of eliminating that sanitary sewer overflow. As noted here, the city did not meet that 2019 deadline. DC has extended considerable enforcement discretion and over time, and allowed, as long as they've seen progression on the development of the long-term control plan at this point. However, enforcement action would potentially happen if the city did not proceed with submitting a long-term control plan and meeting the requirement of what was identified in that document. So what we've kind of framed there is that there's some real needs in a very broad overview. What is exciting about the moment that we're all in is that the need is great, but we're in a funding environment that, as Ron stated, is maybe once in a generation. So the funding has never been so potentially available to the city. The city has already secured $6 million in federal and state grant funding based on what is likely, the feedback we're getting from other funding agencies is that it's likely that City of Vergennes would be well positioned to receive additional state and federal grants for the work identified in the treatment facility and collection system.
That's great, Jenny. Thanks so much. So I'm going to pass it over to Rick Chaput, our chief operator. And what Rick's going to do is to talk a little bit about some of the components of the project. We have lots of photos and videos, but we may ask those. So we're ready, Rick. If you need to get into those, I'm ready to jump in and find stuff if you need it. But you want to take it away and just cover maybe?
Yeah.
Yep, from this point.
Super, thank you. Thanks, Ron. So as Ron mentioned, we've got 3 parts to this project. We've got the collection system itself, McDonough Drive, and then the wastewater plant. And it's important to remember that under the McDonough Drive point is that we're also doing the force main under the river. That's a 10-inch cast iron line that's been under the river since the 60s. We don't really know the condition of that line, but we're being proactive, jumping into that now, getting it taken care of. The collection system, we've had extensive I&I. I'm gonna give this presentation at kind of a high level, but I'm more than happy to dig into the minutia of it. We've got a lot of I&I, which is inflow and infiltration, which in short says that we've got a lot of water coming from ground sources, manholes leaking, broken pipes, several different sources. One of the biggest sources we're finding is sump pumps, which is actually going to be one of the harder problems to solve. And that in part is because we don't have a comprehensive stormwater system. So anyone that currently has a sump pump in their home, that we're going to encourage them to get disconnected and pumped outside, not into the sewer system. We need to find places for all that to go. So we're going to struggle a little bit with that. I think Jim Laro's on. He can speak to the condition of the collection system better than I can. We have done extensive work since the 60s, replacing sections of the collection system. Our collection system reaches as far north as the feed commodities on Main Street, south down to UTC out on Panton Road, and then the new development on 22A, just past there, and then let's see, then out on Green Street and Maple Street. Given this presentation many times, I'm not sure what the natural flow of things should be. A lot of attention is going to be put on the collection system. Let me back up just a little bit. As Jenny and Ron had both alluded, the big problem that we're trying to solve is the overflows at the McDonough Drive pump station. So what happens is, as we get rainstorms, on any normal day, the flows down to wastewater plant, what's coming in from the city is somewhere in the area of 250 to say 350,000 gallons a day. During a stormwater event, those numbers will surge into the millions of gallons. We may get 3 million gallons a day that comes into the facility. That extra flow is coming from the sump pumps, the broken pipes, manhole lids, things of that nature. We need to eliminate that because that sudden surge is causing the overflow at the McDonough Drive pump station and causing the pollution in the creek. The third part of it is the wastewater plant. The wastewater plant, it has been there in some form since the 60s. Currently, the last iteration was 2000. That upgrade has lasted. There's been some issues with that upgrade, but we've gotten to this point. There we go. Should we go, Ron? Should we go right through the headworks here and right through the plant?
Sure.
Yeah. So can you back up okay, so this building right here. So if you've come down to the basin, done some fishing or put your kayak in down there, you've probably gone by this building. It's garbage and recycling. If you're sitting there, you're basically sitting next to this building. It's on the other side of the Public Works building. This is the headworks. Headworks is the first step in the wastewater treatment process. Here we remove solids. And that includes paper products, synthetic products. We also remove grit, things of that nature. That building, as it exists, has been there since the 1970 upgrade. There's also a brick building there. I don't think we got a picture of that, Ron, but that's currently the blower building. That has been there. That is the original 1960s wastewater treatment plant. That was the lab building. It now houses the blowers that provide air for the lagoon system. After the headworks, the flow will go into right directly into the lagoons. If you go to that high level view of the wastewater plant, Ron, one more.
One back?
Yeah. There you go, that one. So you see the flow comes across the yellow pipe. That flows under the river to the headworks building. And then it's going to go through the lagoons in series. So it's going to come in the front. Be great if I could drive. But,
Let me get you.
Yeah, come in the front of Lagoon 1, closest to the left to the treatment facility. And then it's going to go in series. So basically, long story short, it's going to flow from the front of Lagoon 1 lengthwise out of Lagoon 1 into Lagoon 2 lengthwise, and then into the actual wastewater treatment facility building to our aquarobics filters where the waste will receive tertiary treatment. So Ron, if you go down to that that one right there. Yep. Great. On the right, that's me standing next to one of our aquarobics filters that were installed in 2000. These filters were put in place originally as kind of a polishing filter for the system to get rid of the phosphorus and to to polish some of the salt, take some of the final solids out before it goes into the chlorine contact chamber. Chlorine contact will be the last phase before it goes out to the river. The chlorine contact chamber is there to remove, to kill, deactivate pathogens. As you can see, the picture on the left is actually the chlorine contact chamber. That should be a clear concrete basin with maybe an inch of solids in the bottom. It's hard to tell from that picture, but there's about 2 feet of sludge in that chlorine contact chamber. The filter on the right is not doing its job taking out the solids. It's been pretty ineffective for many years, and now it's causing the chlorine contact chamber to fill, which displaces volumes and then causes our pathogen rate to be higher because we're flushing more solids through the system. Where would you like to go from here?
Well, let's jump. I think there'll be plenty of chances to come back and answer those questions. And it's great that we've got Jim Laro here as well. Mel, did you have a question?
Yeah, actually, I didn't have a question, Ron. I wanted to just react to a slide that Jenny had put up that said replacement. It said the collection and wastewater system will be replaced. And I'm pretty certain that the entire collection system is not being replaced under this project. And so maybe if Jenny could explain what is the, because I don't want people who are attending this meeting to think that the city is replacing every line in the city. So yeah, as you go back a few more slides, you will see right there, it says our collection and treatment facilities are old and need to be replaced. So I don't think that that's accurate because we're certainly not going to replace the entire collection system.
Yeah, that's my slide. So that one's on me.
So I think what would be good is if Jenny could explain what projects that of line replacement are planned, so that if there's people in the audience that want to know if they're going to be impacted by new sewer lines, this might be a good opportunity.
Sure. So Mel's correct. You know, to replace the entire collection system would be cost prohibitive. So what we have done in conjunction with the city is gone through and done a lot of investigations, and a lot of investigations have been done over the years, gathered all that information together to identify sewer segments that had the greatest need. So those that were in the worst conditions. And what we identified were 5 different sewer segments. And Mel, I'll need a little bit of time to get all that detail pulled together, and I can get that when we get to the question points to get the specific locations for each of those. But what we did was try to identify those sewer segments where we felt we could have the best impact. And really, any collection system, it's a maintenance item. So there are certain materials that were previously used for construction that are more subject to deterioration. So there's a replacement of pipe material with a more robust materials that are now currently used. So that was the gist of it. But Mel, you're absolutely right. Replacing the entire collection system would be cost prohibitive, and it's not the intent.
Okay, so let's good question, and keep them coming. So getting back into the next step is how much will this cost? To address these issues, we're looking at about a $25.5 million project. This could be funded or can be funded with a combination of both federal and state grants and loans. These are, as we were talking earlier, available at a rate that is really unprecedented. And again, given where Virgins is in the queue, federal and state funders are very interested in supporting us and supporting this issue. The balance can be funded through an increase in our sewer rates. I'll get into this a little bit more, but we have given you some options that kind of show what we call worst case, best case. If we received all the funding that federal and state partners say that we can receive, and then we were a little bit more worst case, saying, okay, let's just imagine that we get the bare minimum, even maybe less than what other municipalities have gotten, just so we can have something to compare and contrast with. We also know that our sewer rates have been kept low. And that was a good strategy. You know, it helped a lot of people, but we now have some of the lowest sewer rates in the state. And so this gives us an opportunity to come up to what would be the average rate. Our rate is $500 a year. The average rate in the state is around $800. If we were to increase, but you know, if this bond were to pass, we would have a rate increase. But what's interesting is that we wouldn't have to raise the rates right away. We can do it over about a 3 to 4 year period. The reason for that is that we don't have to start paying the bond until construction is done. So this is kind of a wonky chart that kind of, again, gets back to what I was talking about, the best case, worst case. And I'm just gonna sort of point to this column right here. Again, kind of looking at this total cost of project, 25 million, less the state and federal funding that about half of that we've already got in hand, another 6 million rather, would get us to around 12 million that we would need to bond for. If we, again, relying on our rates and a rate increase, annual sewer bills would need to go to about $860, and that's about a $360 increase. And again, this is an annual cost. And down here, I've just showed what annual bills would look like between now and 2025. So you can see the difference. And then over here, what I did was we just put in kind of a worst case. We said, okay, let's say, you know, we're not going to get, you know, all the things that we've been told are pretty easy to get, and that would leave us with about a $17 million bond. We would need to have rates go from $500 a year, you can see right here, which is where they are today, up to about 1,040. So gives you an idea. We wanted to just give you that, you know, compare and contrast. So Jenny, you can probably help me out with this, but a bond vote's required for the city to have matching funds available for grant and loan requirements. What this means is that funders are looking for the city to demonstrate its commitment. And by doing so that's the reason why we're putting this bond out. This gives a signal to federal and state agencies that they've got a committed community. And we actually are expecting, if the bond does pass, that there are several funders who are ready to make some projections, but we have to have the bond vote first. The bond vote doesn't commit the city to move forward with any project. The city council would be going through these projects and discussing them. So there's plenty of opportunity for public input and transparency. And Jenny, I don't know if Jenny or Rick, if there's any additional things that I should add there in terms of the bond.
No, I think the feedback we've gotten from funding agencies, and some of it is required. So there's two things going on. There's funding that you've already secured that requires a local match. So there's a couple funding sources that have already been secured in order for you to receive those funds, you need to have the bond vote for the local match. So that's a portion. The other part is for funds that we are going to be pursuing. The strategy that has been suggested to be most successful for pursuing bigger grant funds is the community show of support for the total project costs. And so in this case, it's the 25.5 million is really the cost for doing all of this work. And it is expected to be much less is what the city will end up paying upon receiving the anticipated grants. But the commitment from the voters on support for the project, it helps the city become more strategic and more competitive in pursuing grant funding.
That's great. I know that Matt and Mel are heading off to another meeting, but I wanted to give them an opportunity if they have questions or comments. You all former city managers certainly may have some perspectives, but I know you've got to leave around 6:30, but I'll put that out there. Any questions? any additional information that we could provide tonight? Anything that still doesn't make sense, or that we can help to provide some more information? Oh, looks like, let's see, Steve Rappaport.
Go ahead, Sue, you beat me to it.
Did you get, you got what you needed?
Oh, no, I do have questions, but I saw that Sue beat me to it, so I was allowing her to go first if she wants.
Sue, do you want to go first? Or you want to let Steve go? We're so polite. This is really
Go for it, Steve.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, and a big thank you to the council for certainly making these educationals available. Ron and Matt, I know you and the board, and Rick and Jim, even Neil came in one night, and certainly Jenny have certainly educated all those that have been paying attention, and I thank you all for that. I do have just a quick statement, and I'll keep it to maybe just a couple questions tonight, because I know you do have a couple opportunities for us. My one statement is just to say that I am definitely a proponent of Article 2. I definitely support investing in our infrastructure in the city, filling the piggy bank when we have good favorable times like this. And I think it should be known, as you're saying, that it's not necessarily a commitment to go through with that $25.5 million worth of cost. That these projects are going to be certainly bid out over time and evaluated over time and looked at even closer than what we have had the time to do already. Is that correct? I see Ron nodding his head, but maybe I'm mute. So I'll take that as an affirmative response.
Yes.
There. Yeah.
Sorry, Jenny, you can jump in too.
Yes, from the engineering perspective, that's absolutely correct.
Sounds good. Thank you. And so we'll move on to just two quick questions, and I'll put them both out there, and whoever can take them on and answer them in any which way. But they're basically just two concerns that I have around what I'm hearing and seeing, and what I know about the project so far as the planning going into it. One concern is the source of the excessive I&I. Basically, that in a nutshell. Just to explain a little bit further, I'm curious as to how it's going to impact the right sizing of future capacity. What numbers we're looking at, basically for that, to size this long-term plan, and what the long-term related financial impacts are going to be for whatever size we do come up with. If we're paying on the maintenance and treatment of this excessive I&I, how will that impact future maintenance costs and treatment costs down the road? My second question, and I got to turn my my video on for this one. You guys will like this. Rick will like it especially. I hope so. Our climate is certainly a concern. Rick, you can recognize what's behind me here. Not really behind me, but
yeah, I see it.
I put a little virtual background up there for y'all. This is obviously a cold climate, like for Jens. We had a tough month last month, and I don't know that too much bioactivity was going on down there at the lagoons. I see Rick swinging his head, kind of indicating the same. I know we've used this system since the 60s, and it is utilized in many cold climates, but there are certainly some good ideas out there as to how it can be more efficient in cold climates. And I didn't know if we've looked into that with recent technology and everything else. There's even, I don't even want to get into the ideas that I've seen, but there are some ideas, and I want to see if our engineering team or others have been looking into that. That basically sums up my two quick questions right now. I thank you again, and I'll leave you guys with that.
Jenny, do you want to take the crack at the long-term financial impacts? The first question.
Sure. So the long-term financial impacts of addressing the I&I, there's a couple things going on there. So reducing the I&I that gets into the system, there's kind of a two-track approach. There's the long-term approach where the city is slowly eliminating, identifying those sources and eliminating those. And I'll let Rick and Jim maybe speak to the sources that have been identified. There's been a lot of work put together to point towards, as Rick said, the sump pumps, but that's a slow plan. It's going to take time and effort to really get the I&I out of the system. So that puts us in a position that we don't have time to wait for all of the I&I to be removed. So we need to be mindful in our engineering that we're designing for what is a realistic flow that is going to arrive at the McDonough Drive pump station. So then we're getting into the cost. So the cost of that is you're going to pump it. So there's an energy cost with pumping some of that flow. You're going to store it. So there's a cost to building that existing storage. There's not a whole lot of maintenance costs associated with that. But for what does get pumped, you send that over to the treatment facility, and then there is some cost associated with treating the excess volume. So there is a cost to that I&I existing within your system, and we will need to design around that. That said, that you're treating it now. For the majority of it is making its way to the treatment facility now. The overflow volumes are documented, and you can look at that. What volume that is a very, very small portion versus what makes it to the treatment facility, which is, I don't want to guess, but it's in the 90s. The vast majority of the flow makes it to the treatment facility. So those costs are already part of what you're treating today. What we would look at is an opportunity to be more efficient with how we're treating what we know comes through there. So we have an opportunity to right size pumps. So looking at, we're talking about a big range of flows. So there's pumps that do very well at hitting an efficiency target at a lower flow, and there's those that hit an efficiency target at a higher flow. So looking at opportunities for pumping efficiency will be an energy piece that we would look into. And on the treatment side, how can we store a portion of that flow there so all the downstream processes can be smaller? So you're holding that for a period of time to allow for more efficient treatment at a lower rate downstream of where you have storage. And there's a lot of great opportunities for improving energy efficiency. So when we looked at this in detail for where we saw the treatment facility operating and maintenance costs over the long term, by making these improvements, there wasn't a significant change, because although you're already treating it, so the costs to treat really don't change significantly. But there is that opportunity there's improved technologies. There's a lot better opportunities today than there were 20 years ago for identifying energy efficient engineering designs for the portions of the system that require the highest energy, which are pumping and blowers. That's my long-winded answer to get you to, there isn't a significant change expected in the O&M cost for the treatment facility.
So in other words, the budget pretty much will stay the same. The operating budget that you see in our annual, our P&L. So I'm going to pass it over to. We've got the man who can take cold climate and biosolids, and I'm going to pass it back to Rick and see if you can address Steve's second question.
Yeah, Steve, are we getting closer to answering your question?
Yeah, I might have a follow-up for Jenny after, but I'll let you go first with the cold climate there, Rick.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that question. I was thinking today as I was down at the plant, Lagoon 2 is completely iced over, and Lagoon 1 is nearly iced over, and it's created some real problems. And so, I would like to say at this point that I think we are seasonally in compliance, because you're absolutely right, Steve. In the middle of summer, when we have the biology, and maybe I need to back up a little bit. Not everyone understands this. The wastewater treatment process itself is a biological process. So that requires, some decent temperatures, some sunshine, a lot of things to make these lagoons work. Adverse weather like this, cold temperatures and things, slows the treatment down to a point where we really don't have any biological treatment at this point. It's just kind of flowing through. It'll settle for the winter. The technology, I think, Steve, I think the questions you were asking were maybe more green infrastructure stuff related to the collection system. But in terms of can we do it more efficiently, or are there better ways on the treatment end? Yes, absolutely. We're looking at SBRs as opposed to the lagoons. And there's some other treatment methods that have been proposed.
Can you just say a little bit about what an SBR is?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Reactor.
Yeah, try not to get too deep into it, but so currently our system is a flow-through system. It's two big lagoons. Long story short, each one is roughly 2 million gallons. So we've got about 4 million gallons of waste in those two lagoons down there. As the flow comes in, lagoons, basically this type of lagoon is going to create basically three zones. You're going to have a bottom anaerobic zone where the sludge settles and it continues to break down. You're going to kind of have a facultative zone in the middle, and then you're going to kind of have a top zone with your algae and your duckweed and things like that. It's a natural process. And Ron, that picture that you have of a high level of the falls and the plant, I think is an interesting picture. When you look at that picture, yes, that one there. You know, I've looked at this one a bunch of times, and what's interesting about this picture to me is if you actually look at the falls themselves, you see the bridge goes across and the falls, you'll see the water at the base of the falls is aerated. We are doing, and then if you look at Lagoon 1, you'll see that half of Lagoon 1, the left side of it, has got like white, it's actually air coming up, very dense aerators. We're recreating essentially what you're seeing out there in the river. The oxygen is being created at the bottom of the falls. We're doing the same thing in the lagoon, and the same process is happening. It's a very kind of natural biological process, but it's slow. Detention time in our lagoons, the time the waste comes in to the time it leaves is around 9 days, 7 to 10 days, something like that, depending on the flows. An SBR is a sequential batch reactor. These will be concrete tanks. The waste will come in, and there'll actually be 4 processes that happen in the basin in anywhere, roughly a 4-hour period. So you're talking a very short detention time. The waste is coming in, it's being treated to be very efficient. That's the SBRs in short.
Steve, did you want to jump into that Jenny's question or answer? Sure. I think you had kind of a follow-up. You want to jump in?
Sure. Thank you very much, Rick. First of all, and I'll explain things a little bit further, and I might even have some more conversations for you when we get a quick little tour from you in another week or two.
That's great.
Jenny, my follow-up question for you was the right sizing of basically the whole system. I know you're planning to do some, or recommending some work at the headworks, also the treatment facility. You know, I kind of got into, the excessive I&I causing, some very heavy flows. Is the sizing of the plant treatment facility and headworks and basically the lines getting to it being based on our max flows during those times?
So the short answer is yes. There's a portion of the treatment that you design to that peak hydraulic flow. Your biological process is designed on average, but how you physically move that volume of wastewater has to be done on that peak flow. So what we're looking at, you have 2 opportunities to store, and then you pump. So you can store on the McDonough Drive side of the river, and you can store on the wastewater treatment side of the river, and those are connected by the force main with the pump station. So we're looking at where we can identify the most cost-effective place to include some storage. So we are bringing down that high peak that comes in with the I&I. So the remainder of the treatment process, it doesn't have to be designed to convey that very high peak flow, because your biological process is actually designed to treat. You design that based on an average, a peak 30-day average loading.
Okay, sounds good. If we have such a delta between our average flow and these peak flows that are coming from the excessive I&I, does it make some sense to invest and address our I&I first before taking these follow-up steps?
So it is the most urgent piece, but the portion to keep in mind with it is addressing that I&I. It's a slow process. So when we worked and looked at all of the existing information that the city had gathered over the years, and then we also did some additional investigations. The city did some of their own with smoke testing and whatnot, and we did flow metering. What it all pointed to was the largest portion of the I&I getting into the system are from sump pump connections in private properties. So the challenge with that is, yes, that is a high priority to eliminate and separate those what are essentially unallowed connections to the sewer system. But it's a slow process. So the working with the public to identify and help them solve this is something the city is moving forward with in planning level already. But it's going to take time.
Understood. I definitely understand that. The sump pump is just a tough term for me to get my head around. I know some people that have them. I know some people that have wet basements. I know some people that are pumping with their sump pump outside their house into their own property. They're not contributors to a problem.
No,
have we actually identified some contributors to the problem, or are we just putting a word sump pump on a lot of this I&I that could potentially be coming from outside of the houses on private lines and in our own city mains and stuff like that?
Can I speak to that a little, Ron? Yeah. So I guess let me speak to what we have done to this point. We do have at least one study that was done, I believe it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, that indicated, we sent a questionnaire out to residents. This is before my time. We sent the questionnaire out to residents. They sent it back saying that they had a sump pump. We know we have somewhere in the order of 300 sump pumps at least. That's how many people responded. Now, we don't know if those sump pumps are connected to the sewer. That's going to be part of the further study. What we did do is we did put flow meters in the collection system at strategic points to try to get an understanding of where the bulk of the flow was coming from. The problem was all the flow meters we put out actually went underwater during the high water event that we had. So this indicated that we had a rather extensive problem in the collection system, which is the sump pumps and the broken pipes. We have also done, Jenny had mentioned the smoke testing. So with the smoke testing, we force colored smoke into a manhole and we'll block off its exit so it has to go into the pipe. The smoke, believe it or not, will make it up through the ground. So if there's a crack in the pipe, it'll come up through the ground. We'll see it. Summer before last, we did extensive testing through the whole system. We were really, for a long time, we thought that there was kind of a silver bullet, this smoking gun out there. We're going to find a place where the collection system is connected to a storm drain or something directly to get this much flow coming in. That hasn't panned out, unfortunately, even after all the smoke testing. We've also done camera work where we drive a little tracked camera up the sewer line and we video record the whole thing. We've done some dye work to see where roof drains and things are going. So those are all the tools that we have at our disposal to actually test out the collection system and where the flows are coming from. There's going to be a lot of work going forward to continue to identify what the actual sources are, but that's where we are so far.
Understood. Thank you, Rick. That makes a lot of sense.
You got it.
I'm going to end my questions on now just with one extra point that I found today on the city website, Ron. And this might go right back to you, and maybe you're able to speak to it in the next little bit, or possibly the next educational. Our city sewer ordinance. I've noticed that the city manager and appointees of are certainly have the right to inspect any of our basements and sewers and lines and that sort for dye testing or smoke testing or testing in any way, you know, for flow. Have we utilized that in any way, or do we intend to?
I have not, I don't have an answer for that one.
And you don't have to speak on, you don't have to speak on it right now, Ron.
Yeah.
I'll give
Definitely.
you time to review the ordinance and that sort and see if your interpretation of it is the same as mine.
Sure.
And we can talk about it at other times.
Yeah, I know we've talked to a lot of communities that have this problem as well. So we're in conversation with them and understand that it is a long-term process. The state even recognizes that dealing with this issue it's not an easy one. It is definitely has some challenges, but we're gonna jump into it for sure.
Understood. It's long term. I just wanted to point out we have some tools already in place. It looked like.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Sure. Yep. Surakowski.
Hi there. Thanks. Thanks for doing this. I just wanted to confirm two things. One, Jenny referred to the expense to the city, and I just want to confirm that the proposal for paying for this plan is through grants and through sewer user fees, correct? Not through city funds.
That is correct. We're estimating that about of the 25 million, about half can be covered right now through what's been identified by state and federal agencies. In that when I say covered, we have $3 million from the feds, $3 million from the state. That's a total of 6 million. We anticipate there is another 6 million. That makes 12. And then we would acquire that other 12 through user fees. So it's not the $25 million for user fees, it's 12 million. Does that answer the question?
Yes, and
Okay.
it is through, the proposal is to be through user fees, not through, say, city taxes or the city budget.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. And the second thing I just wanted to confirm is regarding the climate issue and the lagoon question that Steve just had. We have lagoons now, but this proposal is to put in the SBRs, and we would no longer have lagoons, correct?
That's where we're headed, yes.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you both. Other questions? Thanks everybody for coming on a Tuesday night and learning about our sewer system. It's very cool.
Thanks for having us. Nice opportunity.
Any other questions? We will post this on the web certainly, and we have another meeting set for next week. If you have suggestions on how we can better promote this, just let me know. Shoot me a text or send me an email. But in the meantime, Jenny and Rick, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, just feel free to send questions to me as well down the wastewater plant. I think my email address is on the city website. Otherwise, it's rchaput@virgens.org. I'm
manager at virgens.org. And my cell phone number is 802-238-5598. You can call or text anytime. Well, thanks everybody. Have a great evening, and appreciate the time spent. And you know, we'll be back for another meeting soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.